Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening and welcome to The Late Show with Tim Smale. I'm delighted to have you here. Tonight, we are going to be discussing direct instruction and asking the question, what happens when structure meets curiosity? I'll be having a discussion with my guest, Adam Seymour, and also putting in some show features as well. I'm going to open the show with talking about a few of the headlines that have happened over the last couple of weeks. In my first segment, not the 3 o'clock news. The Department of Education's social media team sent out an apology statement for their efforts to give every child the best start in life. The response to the apology has certainly been very mixed. Reform UK's deputy leader, Richard Tice, described children wearing ear defenders in school as insane, claiming neurodiverse conditions like ADHD are overdiagnosed. Education Support's new teacher wellbeing index was released, highlighting a very simple notion: unwell teachers cannot deliver quality education. With 76% of staff who were surveyed and 86% of senior leaders who were surveyed highlighting that they were incredibly stressed in their roles, it certainly seems like it's a difficult time for teachers. In response, the Department for Education spokesperson said the government was making sure that teaching was restored as the highly valued profession it should be. It's still concerning, though, that nearly 41,000 teachers left the UK teaching profession last year. According to the BBC, a school has banned the singing of songs from hit Netflix film K-pop Demon Hunters over concerns they are not keeping with its Christian ethos. My wife and I are hoping for a similar ban in our own household, as our 7-year-old is rather a large fan of K-pop Demon Hunter songs. The Guardian reported that special educational needs in England face total collapse, with councils on course to have run up debts of 18 billion. It seems that all the more tragic, bearing in mind SEN needs seem to be underinvested in. And finally, also in The Guardian, it's been reported that all schools in England are to be given AI-generated pupil attendance targets. Luckily, schools in the UK had not realized the importance of attendance. If you have any thoughts over the headlines, any of the news articles, or anything else you'd like to bring up, then please do comment. And if you're listening back on a podcast, then please do direct message or comment and like. So tonight, the theme of the show is direct instruction and what happens when structure meets curiosity. The aim of the show is not to sell as an idea as the only way to teach, but to spark discussion, debate, and curiosity. So please do feel free to interact. I would like to introduce for tonight our guest, Adam Seymour. Adam is an experienced teacher. He has worked with organizations like Sport in Action, Save the Children. He has worked as a teacher in countries like Mexico, Italy, the UAE, and Switzerland. He has been in many roles and thrived from teacher through to senior leader, and has always been responsible for ensuring a platform for teachers to have a voice in education and ensuring they re-pivot themselves as experts in their field. He is an incredible practitioner, a good friend of mine, and I'm very excited to have him on the show. Adam completed his master's in 2016 on constructivism and direct instruction, and I think he's a great guest to welcome. Hi, Adam.
Hi,
Thank
Tim.
you so much for coming on the show.
Most welcome. It's fantastic. Thanks for inviting me, and really looking forward to getting stuck into some of the sort of deep conversation on direct instruction. So thank you.
Okay, so let's put some pressure onto you and get to know you just a little bit. So can you tell me a little bit about your teaching journey? How did you get started as a teacher?
Yeah, where to start? I think it probably starts for me around about 20 years ago, where I fell in love with, like you said, you were talking about some NGO work that I did previously. Around about 20 years ago, I went to Zambia, worked for Sport in Action that you previously mentioned. Worked in a number of schools, a number of initiatives, and I think it was at that moment that I really found a passion for working with young people and children and having a sort of tangible impact on what they're doing in terms of their day-to-day lives. That was really profound for me to experience that. Came back, and then within 6 months, I applied for the PGC. And then, as you know, the rest is history. Moving on from there.
Cool. What's your favorite thing then about teaching?
I think, yeah, it's got to be the impact, right? It's got to be that tangible impact, what you see in terms of not on a daily basis, maybe not even in a term, but what you see once you start having that connection with students, once you start in bringing in certain ideas and certain structures into their everyday learning and processing, and then you start to see that impact, whether it's an end of an assessment or even just in themselves as a human being, to see that change and that real change within a young person. It just really gives you such a buzz and such a positive feeling. And I think for me, that's probably why I got into teaching.
No expense spared on the special effects, right? So look, we're going to be diving into your thoughts about direct instructions. Plus, we're going to have a few show features, lessons learned. Of course, as teachers, we're going to have a marking break, and I'd like to introduce a shout out board. Before we move on, this show was brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So Adam, thinking about direct instruction, let's start then with the picture. So when you think about direct instruction, what does it mean to you personally as an educator?
Yeah, I think it goes back to when I did my PGC, going back to what I previously said. I think it was very much surrounded by a lot of pedagogy that was very much linked to constructivism, very much linked to the idea that the student should be leading the learning. And after a few years, I sort of started to reflect on that a little bit and thinking, actually, am I getting the outcomes perhaps that I want in my lesson? And then through discussion and through podcasts like yours, started to reflect a little bit further and start to think, actually, direct instruction, what is this? Is it just chalk and board? Is it just lecturing for 1 hour from the front? And actually, it's not. It has a very different definition in terms of modeling and scaffolding and explicitly speaking to the children in a way that can really help and harness their learning. So it really got me intrigued. And that was the beginning of the journey into direct instruction.
Why do you think that direct instruction is important in education? And why do you think it seems to be a topic that's having a resurgence right now, really, amongst various discussion groups, amongst different shows? Why do you think it's such an important topic?
Yeah, I think for me, from what I've read and what I believe for direct instruction to be, is it's a leveler. It is very much a leveler in the classroom. You go into the classroom, and as I said previously before, my slight gripe with a pure constructivist formula was very much based that I saw many students really struggling with the sort of the level of learning, what was asked in a particular lesson, and through direct instruction, it gives everyone a foundation, a platform to move up and to grow in terms of the lesson. It reduces that cognition reduces the cognitive tax. That's how I would phrase it, in the sense that it reduces the cognition in terms of long-term memory, in terms of cognitive overload. And I really think from the research that I read, that it could have a tangible impact in the lesson, but not only the lesson, but also in their ability to retain and remember certain aspects of learning.
I kind of have conversations with people in the staff room and certainly kind of preparing for tonight's show. Yeah, is it very similar then to things like chalk and talk?
I would say it's very different from chalk and talk. I would say that's probably the fallacy that exists. That's the sort of the media sort of spin of direct instruction. So whenever you mention it perhaps in the staff room or a staff group, perhaps that they're not so conscious of direct instruction, that's the first thing they naturally move towards. And that's, to be fair, that's what I previously thought. But when you start to break it down and you realize that actually, in terms of the lessons, in terms of the structure, in terms of the explicit nature of direct instruction, actually, it's very much more on the side of the planning side of things, in terms of scaffolding, modeling, things that we probably do on a daily basis anyway, but just making sure that every lesson is explicit rather than, like you say, just going in and lecturing for 60 minutes and chalk and board. It's making sure that there's a real strict sort of framework for the students to work within in order that they can see what excellence looks like. And by creating this foundation, from my perspective anyway, that it gives every student an opportunity to level up and to move forward in the correct way for progression.
So where have you seen this work most effectively? I mean, is this something that we reserve for the oldest students within a class? Is it something we should be doing with our youngest students? Is it something that could be done in primary and secondary? I mean, how does it kind of best structure itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it's difficult to speak for primary per se, but from my experience of secondary, I would certainly say, this is something that you can teach throughout the years from year 7 right up to year 13. Like I said before, I really feel that it gives structure and a framework, and it's effective. I mean, follow the research, right? I mean, look at what Hattie talks about in terms of his meta-analysis, in terms of effect size, of direct instruction, and giving the students a foundation, giving them something to work with. And that could be applied from year 7, year 8, all the way up to year 13.
Were there kind of any points that for you maybe was the turning point where you sort of realized how impactful this approach could be?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like you said, going back a few years back, certainly 3 or 4 years after the PGCE, I was very much flooded with the notion of just pure constructivism, pure inquiry-based learning from every lesson. From if you have a unit of work, the first lesson is inquiry, the second lesson is inquiry, the third. And I wasn't really seeing the progress. I wasn't really seeing the students flourish. And from that moment, that was almost like the light bulb eureka moment. I thought, oh, what's going on? I'm following all the research. I'm following, what I've learned over the years. And I wasn't seeing some students develop. And of course, those who were more cognitively able, they were able to grasp it. They were able to fly with it. But that was the minority, right? And you're still looking at 50, 60% who are really grappling and struggling with the task. And then that's when I started looking into direct instruction a bit more, realizing they need a framework. Everybody needs a scaffold in order to start moving upwards. And once I started looking into that, that's when it sort of led nicely into and organically into my master's and into the inquiry question I came up with in the end, looking at doing critiquing constructivism versus direct instruction.
Wow. Of the show, and it brings us to our next feature. And Adam, I'm going to put you a little bit on the pressure, and we're going to talk about lessons learned. Yeah. So I kind of want to explore just a mistake or a tough moment that ended up teaching you something valuable in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think once again, I just alluded to it slightly before. I was in Mexico. It was my first international school, and firstly, the students didn't really understand my northern accent, which wasn't great. But besides from the delivery in terms of my accent, like I said before, I planned a complete unit. I think it was a GCSE unit based around obviously inquiry-based learning, and I realized at the end of the unit the results were pretty poor. And maybe I thought, well, yeah, maybe they weren't listening, or maybe they weren't, quite understanding what's going on. And then, like you say, that the biggest mistake for me was just relying on one strand of pedagogy, right? Just saying, right, all in on constructivism. Every lesson will be this because everybody learns that way, and this is the best way forward. But actually, that was that moment of thinking, no, actually, there are other ways. There's not one rule. Nothing is exclusive. We need to delve into the deeper trends, and we need to follow the research and see what's going on. And it wasn't just one lesson, Tim. It was probably about 30. So, But like you say, we all learn from those moments, and that's what makes us teachers and reflective, right?
Yeah, I mean, yours are probably slightly better than mine. I think I learned 2 fairly humbling lessons. One was always look at the table you're about to sit on. As I found myself in front of a difficult Year 9 class, I was brought in as a new member of staff to deal with the Year 9 class, and I sat on a drawing pin, but I could not at any point expose the fact that I had sat on said drawing pin because I felt I would lose the class. So I had to sort of manage my way through that situation without screaming. And secondly was always to take a spare pair of trousers to work, because it's always been the case that on one job, it was the first day that I had turned up on the school site, and I bent over to pick up a box and I ripped my trousers. So we definitely every day
in a school as well, right? Of all places, like, oh yeah, it's fine.
Every day is a school day. I had to go around and wear a gown, and everyone thought I looked super.
Tim,
it was incredible.
You're still here today to tell the story, so that's a positive.
That's it. So we survived lessons learned, and no doubt we will continue to learn our lessons. Also, just a shout out to our listeners to join BET for the biggest week in education from the 21st to the 23rd of January 2026 in the Excel London, with immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content, cutting-edge technology, and unrivaled networking. There's no opportunity quite like it for educators. Get your free ticket today by visiting uk.betshow.com. So let's move now into the second part of the show. The difficulty when we talk about sort of pedagogical concepts and we talk about these different ideas is to try and visualize what it actually looks like. So how does direct instruction look in your classroom on a day-to-day basis?
Well, as I said before, I think the fact that you're planning the lesson, right? You're actually controlling the dynamics of that lesson. You are being explicit in your planning to begin with. That is the first sort of step, if you like. And of course, you can bring in other variants of pedagogy. You'll start with your little, multiple choice quiz question, for example, a bit of retrieval practice from the last lesson to build up that foundation of knowledge. And then, of course, share objectives, just like you would do in a normal lesson. But then you really start to bring in something that I can allude to later on, which is Rosenshine's principles of instruction. And some of those ideas based on the idea of modeling, scaffolding. So, for example, if I'm doing a GCSE lesson I did the other week, looking at a 10-mark question, we'd bring in, a particular paragraph, an exemplar response. We would look at that exemplar response. We would pick it apart, look at the connectives, what works well, what could we even improve on that particular exemplar response, and then from then, right, we can practice. We can look at other examples of questions, maybe not the same question, maybe a slightly nuanced, different question. But then the students have the opportunity to use the scaffold, to use the framework, and to practice with no sort of strings attached test. It's formative, purely formative. There's no stress. We're all going to make mistakes. It's the first time we're doing this 10-mark question. So let's look at what looks good, right? And then actually, I'm going to give you a framework. I'm going to give you some scaffolding. We need some key connectives. And of course, there's some students who really need that. And of course, there's some students perhaps in that lesson who don't need that. But that perhaps they have a different role to play. Perhaps you can take the connectives away from those students. Perhaps you can ask them to help synthesize the task to the less able students, and they become a facilitator, and they start thinking on a different sort of schema of thinking as well. So there's multiple ways to look at this, but that's just a typical lesson I would deliver associated with direct instruction. And as you can hear and see, there's no chalk and talk there. There's no me standing for 30 minutes and delivering a lecture. It's very much explicitly planned with scaffolding, with exemplar responses and opportunity. And I think this is key. This is what Rosenshine talks about, the opportunity for practice and success.
So, I mean, does it suggest that we sort of as teachers need to pretty much know everything that we're talking about? Because I guess as we structure it and we deliver that new material, and we need to be able to provide that kind of that quality feedback and ask great questions. I mean, is there that reliance now that as the teacher, I really need to know absolutely everything in the classroom?
I mean, I think obviously it's difficult when we're history teachers. So, of course, we're well read. We try and read as much as we can. But of course, there's always going to be something in particular history that we don't quite understand or know. So, to be a great facilitator, there's an honesty there. You might not know something, and I think if anything, if you're honest and you tell the drill, actually, that's a really interesting point. I didn't know that. I think that shows that humility, and it shows a responsibility to the learning, and to admit when you perhaps don't know something. So I don't think you actually need to know everything that was ever created in terms of a particular piece of content. Of course, it helps if you've got that contextual knowledge, but in terms of setting up the lesson, though, in terms of setting up the structure of the lesson, this is where the direct instruction comes in. This is where the scaffolds and the exemplar responses come in, and the students can go away and practice. And like you say, the students might not know it. Just today, we did something on Mussolini, and the students were really struggling with Mussolini's rise to power. And I said, guys, get your notes out, get your knowledge maps out, look at them, get some ideas from that. It's absolutely fine. What I'm interested in is how you apply that knowledge. And like you say, if you follow my example, you'll be able to lean on that, use that, pivot towards that in order to practice with a multitude of different questions.
So what kind of students does this particularly benefit? Is this something for everybody, or are there particular groups of students that sort of really do benefit from such a strategy?
I mean, as I said before, I think everyone can benefit from this. I mean, everybody starts at a certain level, but of course, in time, you will take that scaffolding away. Of course, certain students, whether it's their cognitive ability or whether they've got a learning need, of course, they might need that scaffolding, that sort of more direct approach for a further period of time, and that's absolutely fine. And there's other students, like you say, the more sort of gifted and sort of high-level students within the class, of course, they might need maybe one lesson on this or two, and then they've got it. But then you can always adjust those frameworks. You can ask and demand different things within those frameworks to look at different schemas of thinking, conceptual base, connectivity between different schemas and concepts. And then you can start to push those high order thinking skills towards the students. And of course, you can take that framework away and they can start to reconstruct in a different way because they can synthesize and they're able to connect. But maybe 70% of the class can't. And this is where the direct instruction comes in. And this is why, for me, it's very much a leveler. But it's something that it's not exclusive. You can bring other things and you can bring in a bit of inquiry if you feel that the lesson needs that. And this is where you've got this adaptive thinking and adaptive teaching, and we could get lost in all the pedagogy. So.
Yeah, well, and then that's the big debate, right? Sometimes it's kind of framed as a traditionalist against progressive. Sometimes it's framed in other ways, but you often get this kind of dialogue that says it's either direct instruction or inquiry-based learning. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, they're not exclusive, right? I mean, you can have a myriad, you can have a plethora of pedagogy within a lesson. That's absolutely fine. And you are the expert in the room. You are the teacher. You are setting that lesson up accordingly. And it, like you say, it depends on the ability of the kids. Depends on where they're coming from. You might start with a lot of direct instruction, but you realize, wow, these kids are really flying with it. I'm going to take it all away next lesson. I'm going to do a deep dive into the inquiry because they've got that surface level knowledge. They have that ability. We can go even further with it. We can be more inquiry based, and that's absolutely fine. And it's that ability to know not when to bring it in. Not if to bring it, but when to bring it in. I think that's what I think. I remember seeing a video years ago from John Hattie, basically saying the same thing. Inquiry based learning is really important. It really has an impact on children's lives in terms of their high order thinking skills. But it's not perhaps if you bring it in, it's when you bring it in. And I think that's teaches us that they're interconnected and you can't be exclusively just direct instruction or just constructivist. You have to be a plethora and a sort of hybrid, if you like, of the both. Yeah,
which sometimes seems to be the way the debate is framed. It has to be one or the other. One is mutually exclusive. Reading a lot of literature at the moment, it's you're on one team or you're on the other team, and it seems to be that when I've kind of observed teachers and when I deliver in my own classroom, we're flexible beasts. I was trying to sort of pigeonhole myself today to say what sort of teacher I am. And I describe myself probably as a fad teacher. I tend to pick up something I'm really interested in, play with that concept, and then move on to something else I'm interested in. And then I kind of keep reviewing cycles of that. And again, in preparation for today's show, I've started kind of planning my lessons, trying to stick a little bit more rigidly to the idea of direct instruction and how it might be setting out. So I guess the question I have then is how do you know it's time to move on? How do you know that a student has those concepts when you're utilizing something like direct instruction, and how does that maybe differ sometimes from them mimicking what you are suggesting?
Yeah, I think obviously it depends, isn't it? It depends on the type of assessment you're delivering, course you're delivering. You're constantly checking the temperature, checking the pulse, and see where they're at. Whether it's a Q&A or whether it's something in terms of comprehension or writing or reflection. And I think it depends. There's no one answer for that question. It depends. If you've got a high flying range of students, and they seem to be grasping the key concepts and objectives linked to a particular question, then, like you say, that's the point. You release them and let them go with it. I think it just depends on the cohort, I think. But you bring it, you keep it as long as it's needed, depending on the cohort, depending on the particular challenge. For example, with my GCSE group, certainly with paper 1, which is more kind of sort of low stakes questions, describe and why did this happen, etc. Fine, I'm feeling and I'm seeing through formative assessment that these guys are getting it, right? After a few lessons, yeah, so I get it. It's a describe, it's a why. But then you move on to paper 2, which is source analysis, and they've got to start to extrapolate key points and comparatives and looking at the sort of the purpose and the origin and subtle nuances and agendas. And this is more challenging in terms of the thinking and conceptually thinking. And this is where the scaffolding, it stays on. You can kind of think of the analogy of when my daughter was riding her bicycle, she had the stabilizers on. She was pretty quick with it. And within literally 2-3 lessons from her father, I was screwdriver and they were off, they were gone. And I'm like, this is direct instruction. This is giving her the scaffold, and it goes. But then my neighbor, he's in America now, so he won't hear this. It took him, several weeks. I saw him out literally outside my window, and he put the stabilizers on. He took them off, and I thought, yeah. A week later, he put them back on. And that's it's a great analogy, I think, for teaching, because the scaffold's always there if you need it, right? You might think they're flying with it, and then they hand in that essay, and you're like, no, we're putting the scaffolding back on. Yeah, they need this. They need that sort of that exemplar response. So they need that grounding again. And that's how I see it in terms of how to apply and how to adapt it within a lesson. But like you say, like my neighbor and me, we're different. We have different families, we have different genes, we have different ways of doing things. And I think education is on a similar path.
It's part of the beauty of it, right? Like the differences within education, right, and our student body too. So like as teachers, we hear a lot about different pedagogical ideas and things like that. What kind of the challenges that teachers can experience in sort of making direct instruction work in practice?
Well, that's it. I think there's 2 parts to that. I think the first part is, you make sure you read the literature. You don't need to do a master's or a doctorate to understand direct instruction. Just you read the literature and you listen to podcasts like this, another plug, and you have the opportunity to integrate that into your learning. And like you say, like a lesson should be a place where you don't feel safe as a teacher, and I mean that in the sense of going in there and exploring different ideas. And some will work and some will not. That's great teaching and learning. That's great practice. Being brave, follow the IB profile and be a risk taker if you follow the IB. Follow these things. And if you're not following them, then perhaps you're just going to stay in that sort of cycle of not really knowing if it does work for your cohort. And it might not work. You might have a group of high flyers that really need to be pushed and challenged and constantly need to be challenged in terms of inquiry, and that's absolutely fine. But I think that's one way of looking at it in terms of what you said. Sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
No, at all. I think it has that kind of beautiful synergy, like direct instruction with assessment for learning, and I guess being on top of formative assessment. I saw a really interesting quote, which is you can't ask for understanding if you don't know what you are teaching. And I guess it's we probably have to reframe ourselves as experts and not be so worried about it if we're delivering a direct instruction program.
Yeah. Exactly. No, 100%. And I think, sorry, just going back to what you said in the question, my mind went blank. Just when you talk about the challenges, and I think one of the challenges, I've worked in a range of schools now, and when you have a school that is kind of culturally connected to a way of a curriculum, of approach of a curriculum where inquiry seems to be central to the ethos, that can pose a bit of a challenge culturally, because you go in there with your direct instruction hat on, and you go in there and you start to talk about the merits, and you start to try and deliver that, and then perhaps the students aren't used to that style of approach. And although it could be effective and probably is effective, there can be a degree of negativity surrounding that approach. because perhaps the students haven't been exposed to that way of teaching. And that could be a challenge for a teacher, even though that, well, hang on there, the research and the meta-analysis and everything kind of links into this, but the school are pushing back on it. And like you say, like if schools like that, it can be a challenge. And hopefully over time, students get used to it. There's more professional development, and actually the school realizes that there can't just be a kind of one way of one approach of education, right? Which we have mentioned before. It can't be exclusive, right? It has to be a sort of a hybrid approach. But schools can be like this. I mean, we've worked in plenty of schools over the years, and I've heard from other colleagues as well that they can be quite sort of stringent about certain approaches, and it can go the other way as well. I've had colleagues who have said that every lesson needs to be linked to a Rosenshine or linked to a direct instruction. They even have to put something on the board that says this is linked to Rosenshine's principles of instruction, which I find bizarre, in my opinion. I'm not saying it won't work. I'm sure it will in many ways, but it's the danger of schools falling into the trap of just picking one pedagogical strand and completely sticking with it.
So we just had a great question come in. Like, what are the limitations of direct instruction? Like, does it need a certain level of literacy to avoid spoon feeding, or pupils relying on support?
That's a good question. I think you're right. I mean, I think there are limitations. I think you need to, you in terms of like any pedagogy, if you apply it too much, there's a problem. But before you even get in, to direct instruction, you need a foundation of knowledge, right? You need context. You can't just walk up to your first lesson and begin to show them a scaffolding of an essay when they haven't really got the foundation of knowledge yet. I think it's important that they have literacy, they have the context, of course, and when they are ready, you bring in a little bit more structure in how you want them to approach a particular question. And of course, once they've got that knowledge as well, of course, you could do an inquiry as well. You could play it alongside the lesson. There's also that possibility. So as I said before, it's not exclusive. You wouldn't just be following direct instruction for the whole unit. You're using a range of strategies across the board.
Great, thank you. So the next thing I'd like to flag up is there anyone that you think needs a shout out? So to the listeners out there, are there any teachers or leaders that are deserving of some extra recognition, a kind word, or a bit of educational love? Comment if you're listening live, shout out for someone that you think needs recognition or a kind word, or direct message me on LinkedIn for a future show. So let's move back into part 3. Just within school and sometimes kind of being down a particular path. But if a school did focus on direct instruction, how do you think that would affect like staff culture and pupil outcomes?
It's a really good question. I think in terms of, like you say, going into the pedagogy a little bit and the research, the fact that students have that instruction means that perhaps there's less misconceptions, there's less chances for falling down the rabbit hole and making those mistakes. And looking at the research, it talks a lot about making, in terms of cognitive overload. They talk about this idea that if you have direct instruction, the students are able to apply the correct strategy or a strategy that works. The problem, if you're completely using the constructivist approach, it can create areas where there's misconceptions and they have to rework it, and that causes cognitive overload. So if you've got less cognitive overload, you'll have greater success, right? In terms of exams, in terms of results, in terms of progression. And I think that progression will lead to a lot more confidence within the classroom, within the staff body, a can-do attitude. It will lead to less stress, maybe less worries, because the students, they have a strategy, they have a framework, a blueprint in order to follow, rather than just saying, guys, we've got some questions. You answer them how you think it should be answered. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if 70% of those students go away and write it completely off the charts, and there's nowhere near what you're looking for them to achieve, then you have to rework that. And that can create a bit of a dissidence and a cognitive overload. And that could be troublesome because they have to rework those answers, whether it's maths or whether it's history or English, they have to go and rework those models, and that produces a cognitive overload, and it can impinge on long-term memory. So I think, leading to that, you've got students who are feeling assured. They come in, I know how to answer these questions. I know how to approach a kind of to what extent question. I have strategies. I've learned those strategies. In fact, I've created my own because I'm quite able. I use Mr. Seymour's, but actually standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm gonna leapfrog Mr. Seymour's, and I've actually come up with my own sort of critical analysis style of essay writing now, and I'm going to use that one. Fantastic. That's what we want you to do. We don't want you just to stick with our frameworks, right? The idea is that you move up, you level up, and that's what we're looking for. And by outcome, hopefully, you have a school that's feeling positive and vibrant, and students aren't as stressed because they feel confident. They know how to approach different ways of learning, and that's what I would see in terms of the impact on a school culture, I would say.
I mean, do you ever see kind of resistance? Is there a point within a student's academic journey where maybe they haven't experienced this before that you meet a little bit more resistance because they're, I don't know, a little bit more used to a particular culture within the school?
Yeah, and 100%. I've worked in a couple of schools like that, and it can be challenging, right, for a teacher because they're used to a certain culture. Well, sir, we always do presentations. We always do it our way. You always the other teacher gives us the whole lesson, every lesson. It's flipped learning every lesson, and you really you get us in. We're straight onto a task, and then we're onto another task, and then we debate it, and then we discuss it, and then we practice it, and then we re-practice it, and the next lesson we review it again. It's like, oh, sir, it's a different pace and culture. The other lesson we sit on our laptops and we do presentations and PowerPoints, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do that sometimes as well. It's good to have variety in teaching and learning. Yeah. But at the same time, students can resist. They sir, this is they can resist, and of course parents can resist, right? You get an email. They're a little bit concerned because that when they went to school, and I get that a lot. When I was at school, Mr. Seymour, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but when I was at school, we would have to do it ourselves. We wouldn't get any help, and it was that kind of thing. And I respect this. Okay, thanks for the feedback, but after 20 years in education and research, I think we might have a slightly more deeper understanding of what we're trying to achieve here. So yeah, it can be challenging, but like you say, that's part of the journey, I think.
Yeah. I mean, is this something that you would see? Would you see kind of tension in a school with sort of sometimes with the culture of the school, or what we're all really focused on as teachers, like with our own workload? Is there a balance to be had there, and are there tensions that could be had between direct instruction, education policy within schools, and our workload as teachers?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's various different paradigms there, isn't there? You've got that kind of school culture within that you have a sort of staff body culture, and within that you've got your microculture within the classroom, and it's finding that balance. I mean, ultimately, I think good schools will of course they will share research and knowledge and understanding, but trust teachers, and the word is trust, isn't it? To go in and deliver those approaches. And every teacher has a different nuanced opinion of what education looks like. But as long as we're exposed to that toolbox, we have the power to utilize that toolbox when it's needed. But of course, there's tensions, and there's different perspectives. And a teacher not so long ago, we were planning an assessment task, and he said something along the lines of, we were planning this assessment, and I was very much, let's give them some connectives, let's give them, these are young people, they need our help, Superman and all that. And this guy said, no, you don't want to help them, we give them enough help. And I just, that one line, and I don't think it came from a place of malice, but I think it came from a place of, we need to be cruel to be kind, right? Let's not give them any help, and they'll learn. And no, I don't think they will learn. I think we're here to help them, we're here to teach them and to show them the way. Right, and he kind of looked at me bizarrely, but there was a bit of tension. I'm not going to lie. I was speaking up for what I believe in a very sort of careful and professional way. But it's those little tensions, and he's a really good guy, and I'm sure he's doing well. And we were fine. There was no real sort of backlash after that, but just that one little opinion and being challenged within the staff body and the staff room creates a little bit of tension in the room, and I think that's why it's important that school bodies have frameworks, right? School policy and teaching and learning policies, not to be explicit, like in the sense of you have to teach this, but to give teachers the autonomy to empower teachers and to trust teachers, rather than to be explicit, pardon the pun, to do a particular mode of teaching. So, yeah.
So, I mean, like, can teachers go rogue and do direct instruction themselves, or does it need to be department wide? Does it need to be school wide? Or like, what kind of freedoms have we got as teachers?
Yeah, I think for me, of course, I think it's something you would discuss in the department. This is how I approach this particular module. I think it's good to talk about it in the department, and I certainly have done that over the years with my various different teams. And but I would never exclusively say to my teams, look, you have to teach like this. I would encourage it and say, look, and I would share research and I would share opinion, but there would never really a sort of explicit saying you have to teach direct instruction because this is the only way forward. I think it's hopefully, teachers will reflect on that and hopefully bring it in at some stage or not. But I'm not going to downgrade a teacher by saying, oh, you haven't used my approach, because I'll go in there and I'll see one of the best inquiry-based learning lessons I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And the kids are all flying and great. Like, that's what I want to see as a head of department. That's what you want to see as a senior or school leader, or even just a colleague, right? You want to see your colleagues and your friends fly, whatever mode that is, because ultimately you just want the kids to do well, and that's it. Whatever gets you there, whether it's direct instruction, whether it's inquiry-based learning. But just going back to the mechanics of it, it has a place, in my opinion, and I think it has a place certainly with students who are struggling cognitively or EAL, SEN. They need support, they need help, and of course, just like my daughter, you take those stabilizers away at some point, and that's when you can play around a bit more with the sort of more inquiry-based activities, which is great and are needed, right, to help the kids fly.
But I think even the recent research from the EEF sort of came out and showcased that actually, if we're talking about SEND students, this has a really significant impact on them and their chances at sort of improving their outcomes. So, okay, let's go fantastical. Like, what would a school look like if direct instruction was embedded at every level? Go fantastical on me.
Oof, wow. What a school. Are you coming? Is that a job invitation? Or it would be, for me, it would be like, I think I previously mentioned it. What would it kind of, it would be a really confident, not stress-free, but less stress environment where I think everyone has a toolbox, right? Every student has a toolbox. So whether it's maths or science or history, they go in and they go, okay, we've got this learning going on today. We're analyzing Mussolini's rise to power, and Seymour's going to ask me to evaluate that at the end of it. I know he is, but I've got a toolbox up here that I can use that he's given me, and I've got that for life now, and I can bring that toolbox about. And I know how to give a point, an explanation, evidence, and link it back to the question. I know how to evaluate something from both sides, and I can use that. And I know maybe the guy next to me, he's got multiple tools, but he's got Mr. Seymour's toolbox. He's got his own as well, but I'm not there yet. Right? It just makes the average Joe in the lesson, it gives him that security that I've got something. He's not going in there with nothing. And there's nothing worse than seeing a kid struggle, right? It's heartbreaking when you see all the kids getting on. There's a kid just sort of a deer in the headlights analogy. They're just completely lost. And if they are lost, that's on me. Like, I'm their teacher. Like, the reason he's lost or she's lost, he doesn't have a toolbox, right? And if it's his first lesson, okay, give it. It's not your fault, but you can start from day one, right? And that would, of course, he has that toolbox, he has that ability to access the learning, and it's a leveler. And I think every student feels okay. Every student feels a confidence, degrees of confidence, of course, depending on ability, etc., and passion, and so many other variables. But I think the school would be a really calm place, and I don't think you'd see, for me, as much worry when it comes to the end of assessments and things like that, because they've got a toolbox, right? And like you say, through research, it's proven to be very successful. This idea of scaffolding, modeling, practice, success, follow the chain of Rosenshine, what he talks about, reflect on that. Don't listen to me, just, listen to the research, listen to, what other people are saying about, the outcomes. And that's how I would see the school. I'd say a really positive environment.
I think it's really important just to segue away for a moment and go to our new sort of section, which is the marking break. And during this small section of the show, we're going to move away from direct instruction, and we're going to try and see some of the human in us as teachers. So, Adam, when you're not thinking about direct instruction, which I'm guessing you're thinking about all the time, cleaning your team,
I'm dreaming of it, Tim.
thinking about teaching, what's helping you to sort of unwind?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's important, isn't it, that we find time and space with our families and friends. Weekends. I live in Switzerland. I'm very fortunate to live not far from the Jura Mountains and Mont Blanc. So we do a lot of snowshoeing and hiking and walking, which is great. Really alpine air, which is phenomenal. Really, really fortunate and thankful for being here. So that's a lot. Obviously, I have a daughter, a wife, and obviously keeps you busy in terms of play dates, taking my daughter to piano or whatever, and just play that kind of thing. I also work for an NGO, and you mentioned in the beginning, but I've started working for a new NGO over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, called the Geneva Centre for International Justice, which is a Geneva-based NGO where we go in and we basically, we're a second pair of eyes for the UN. We read reports, we reflect on sort of human rights issues around the world, and then we get to sort of flag and highlight those reports in the UN, which is a pretty amazing experience. So I spend a little bit of time working with them on their website and things, and so that kind of keeps me busy from time to time, as well as direct instruction, of course.
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, like for me to unwind now, yesterday I sort of performed a dance routine to again, one of the headlines I referred to, the K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh yes, yeah.
My 7-year-old girl is rather insistent that I come on into the bedroom and I throw those moves out. I have never been able to dance. It took me about 3 years to learn how to floss, the backwards and forwards one.
Yeah.
I'm an avid reader. It comes from being a history teacher as well, but I love getting lost in a sort of fantasy world, like with the books that I read. Yeah. I would say that I watch a movie, but now I think my wife and I, we kind of have to split a movie up into 3 individual sessions so that we can watch it, then fall asleep, watch the next third, then fall asleep, and then watch the final third, and then fall asleep.
I empathize. I think if we make it to 10 o'clock, we kind of celebrate, like, wow, we made it to 10 o'clock without falling asleep. It's I
don't even make it to 10 o'clock on New Year's Eve. It's normally like 9:30, and I'm pretty happy with that.
How the times change, Tim?
That's it. Life has changed, right? Okay, everyone, your tea break is over. We're now going to move into to part 4 of the show. Just as a reminder, or for those who are tuning in a little bit later, or those who are picking up partway through the podcast, we're talking about direct instruction and what happens when structure meets curiosity. We're not looking to sell a particular idea as the only way of teaching, but we're looking to celebrate diversity within the classroom and to celebrate different ideas. So, Adam, kind of coming back to sort of direct instruction and maybe how we sort of help to empower teachers who are listening, and to for the likes of me to empower myself as well. For those teachers listening who want to bring more direct instruction into their own practice, like, what is a simple first step?
I mean, the first step could be to look at something like Rosenshine's Principles of Instruction. I think he really, I mean, obviously he's got a lot of published works, but there's a lot of different sort of PDFs that are flying around LinkedIn and things that just really outline several steps of direct instruction according to Rosenshine, and it literally would take you no more than 5 or 6 minutes to read that, and that could be literally a very simple step, having a little look at it, even just putting it on your pin board and just saying, right, you know what, today I'm going to focus on one of those strands. I'm just going to bring it in any part of the lesson, a starter, the main, wherever you are. Particularly, I would say, if you're at the beginning of a unit, even better, but it doesn't matter where you are, you can still bring that in. That could be a really simple step, in terms of direct instruction, in terms of scaffolding, and you'll have scaffolds, you'll have exemplar responses, but just getting them out and sharing them with the kids and showing them what success looks like. So that could be a really good starter, just by looking at a simple document like Rosenshine. Okay.
And are there sort of any strategies? Are there any books that you've picked up? Are there any role models who really can help sort of shape our thinking on direct instruction?
There was a really good text, and I think there is a PDF version somewhere, which is written you can read it probably in less than 20 minutes. But there's a really good book by Clark, Schweller, and Kirshner, sorry, The Case for Direct Instruction, and that is a fantastic book. It's quite thick, and it can be quite heavy at times. But if you're into it, like I am, then it's a fascinating read. And like you say, it's all backed up with science, cognitive science, neuroscience, and it's a great read. And certainly start with the Rosenshine first to get some ideas just for your everyday lessons. But if you want to delve a little bit deeper, The Case for Direct Instruction by Clark, Swell, and Kirshner is a really, really good one. That was
I think kind of like reading up about it. Kirshner was the guy who was sort of saying, look, your lessons really shouldn't look like chalk and talk. They should be kind of different to that, and there is a very structured process to direct instruction. I know that's led to a few kind of challenges that kind of directly address him, but certainly his work seemed super interesting. Look, you've played that role in the senior leadership team as well. You've taken responsibility for things like teaching and learning. Is there any advice that you might have for those in a similar position who are either a school leader or they're a policy maker, they're responsible for teaching and learning? Is there anything that they could do to support teachers around them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, apart from what I said previously about the research, I mean, there's bound to be someone in the building who is following this, who is really an advocate for direct instruction. And my advice would be to tap into that, right? You don't need, thousands of dollars to bring in speakers. You don't need as much as I'd love to have John Hattie come into my school tomorrow. He's my idol. Then I, that would be great. But you've got expertise in the building, right? You've got some phenomenal teachers in our schools. So tap into that. There's bound to be somebody who's into that. And if there isn't, you can become the champion, right? If you're into it, you get into it. You read about it. And then, volunteer at the next, Monday night PD session to give a 15-minute debrief of what it is. And it might just tickle the minds of a few people. And before you know it, you've got a working party, you're sharing ideas. And then the next inset day, you're delivering some, highly quality standard direct instruction talk. So that could be a really good way into it in terms of sharing ideas.
Thank you. Okay, so if you guys who are listening, a shout out for anyone that you think needs a bit of educational love, a kind word, a bit of support, recognition for something they're doing, then please pop it into whichever sort of live streaming site you're listening to. Just pop it into the chat and let's give them a shout out. Also, if you've got any questions for Adam or for the show as a whole, then please do post them. It's great to hear your thoughts and opinions. So just a shout out to Hatchet Learning. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning. They're publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. We're going to move now into part 5 in our discussion about direct instruction. And then I'm going to put Adam under the cosh and put some pressure on him in a quick fire round. I will be asking after part 5 a series of questions, Adam, and he will have a limited time in which to answer those questions. So don't go away. Adam, what's one thing that you've learned yourself through exploring direct instruction? I
think one thing I would take away is I think, like I said, I touched on it previously before, this idea that it's very much an equalizer, right? It's a leveler. It's the fact that you're going in, and particularly in my particular context, and probably yours, it's in an international community. You're constantly getting students who just come in January, they come in February, they just drop in because, oh yeah, my parents have a new job in the city and here I am, I've just come from Botswana. Okay, great, welcome. And they're arriving perhaps with little or a wealth of knowledge or understanding of a particular subject, but just the fact that you're giving everyone a grounding, you're giving everyone an understanding, a scaffold. I think this is a good way to support students. And I think what I've learned, it's an equalizer. It gives those students perhaps who've never really had the support. Maybe they've been in certain learning where they haven't really given that scaffold or that framework. It gives them an opportunity to shine and an opportunity to feel a sense that I can achieve something. And of course, as I said before, the HP students of course they will fly and you will take off the stabilizers from those students. But the students who perhaps, like you say, didn't really have that opportunity to develop or to have that toolkit, it gives them an opportunity, and it's a leveler. It gives every student an opportunity to shine and to move forward and to progress and feel that sense of achievement, which everybody deserves to have, whether it's getting whatever the grade is, but just for the sense of having an achievement rather than going in there with a sense of the loss and feeling a little bit a lack of direction in terms of what they need to do to achieve what they have to do in a particular lesson. And that's what I would say. It's very much an equalizing part of teaching.
That's awesome. We've got our first shout out. It's Aidan Dixon for being an amazing teacher. So Aidan, keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome, and thanks for contributing to what you're doing. So Adam, back to direct instruction. Like, if every teacher could take away one message from our discussion today about direct instruction, what would it be?
I think it's for me. You can talk a lot about the meta-analysis and the impact, and it is high impact. From Hattie's visible learning, etc. But I would say 3 simple things to take away. If you are scaffolding, and if you are showing a framework, and then you're showing what does excellence look like. Okay, because I always remember a student who said, "Well, sir, how do I know?" And this is when I was deep into the inquiry-based learning, and it's almost like convinced that was the only way. And a student said to me, and this is it really resonated. He said to me, "Yeah, but sir, how do I know what excellence looks like? How do I know what it looks like?" And I was like, "Right, how do you know what it looks like?" And that's the kind of like the penny dropping, right? So you need to model, you need to show exemplar, you need to, and this is what excellence looks like, right? There's many versions of excellence, but this is a pretty good response. You learn from it. Let's dissect it. Let's talk about it. So scaffold, model, exemplar responses, and then finally practice, right? Let's practice. Let's go through that. And it sounds, it doesn't sound funky. It doesn't sound, like the best lesson ever, but practice will help those students progress. Right? Sometimes, constructive learning, it can be fun and game-like, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it has its place. But if every lesson is like that, like I really feel, and like you say, this is more from Hattie than me, that he talks about the idea that it sounds good, but is it really helping them? Is it really helping them progress? Is it really helping them be the best versions of themselves? Potentially not. And this is not me. This is looking at Hattie's work on that particular thing. So scaffold, exemplar, model that through exemplar work, and then practice. Those are the 3 or 4 things I would say.
Yeah, and I guess we've probably all been there, right? Where we've created maybe a lesson outside of this kind of pedagogical technique, and it's been brilliant, right? It's been the best lesson we've ever taught. And then they come back to the next lesson, and it's like that moment in time never happened. The proverbial pat on the back you're giving yourself. You're like, you don't remember anything. And I guess, it's having these kind of structured approaches that are so important, because they do have other things that happen in their lives. I mean, my life is about history. I love it. But they also have maths and French and so on and so forth. And Fortnite and a social life, which I don't worry about.
Call of Duty, come on.
So the last question on direct instruction, instruction. What gives you hope about the future of education when you think about direct instruction?
This moment right now, the fact that we're having this conversation, right? Isn't that is basically telling us that this is part of the conversation, and it's not a distant memory or a distant afterthought. The fact that we're having this fairly robust discussion about direct instruction and the merits of it, when should we bring it in, at what moment? Does it work for 7 to 13? Does it work in primary? Shout out to the primary teachers. Where does it work, right? And what are the merits? And the fact that we have this debate, this is great professional development. Schools should be, going down this track. They should be having these debates, podcasts, discussions, book clubs, whatever you want to call it. But the fact that it's in conversation, I really feel that gives me hope that this is, not a closed book, but a very much an open book in terms of, where we're going with this particular approach to teaching and learning.
I think that's the hope about the future of education I have. I've been an advocate, I think, for a long time that the teachers need that voice in education, and I'm so lucky to have had you on the show, because you've got such a powerful voice talking about direct instruction, and for me it's something that's motivating, it's exciting, but this opportunity to share great practice amongst us as teachers and reposition ourselves slightly away from some of the headlines that come out where maybe we are sort of not positioned as the experts, and that everybody does have a view on education. Yeah. So for me, I've been super excited by our conversation. I do have to say, I'm about to put some pressure on you. So we're ending part 5. So round of applause. Yeah. But now the pressure really comes on. This is the quick fire round. Adam, I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer as many of my questions as possible. Okay. You are to do so with as fewer words whilst making sense as is possible. Your aim is to get through as many of those questions as possible. Let me know when you're ready. As soon as you hear the gong, we are ready to go.
All right, let's go.
Adam, give me one word that sums up direct instruction.
Instrumental.
A quote or idea you live by.
Follow the research.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Eggs with sausage.
Coffee or tea to survive the day?
Come on, one answer, coffee.
Subject you pretend to like, but secretly don't.
Business.
Oh God, I thought it'd be geography, Red pen, green pen, or pink pen?
Oh, pink.
Green pen. Most overused teacher phrase you would catch yourself saying?
Follow the research. Oh, sorry.
If you weren't a teacher, what job would you have?
Oh, barista.
Barista, nice. Homework, essential or overrated?
Overrated.
Favorite classroom snack?
Oof. Hobnob, if available.
What song describes your teaching style? Can't say that final answer. I can't accept that final answer. That was an acceptable first performance on my quick fire round. For my future guests, this is the pressure. This is the kind of atmosphere, the looking glass you will be placed under towards the end of the show, an end of an exhausting show where you have really worked hard to inform our listeners. Okay. So Teachers Talk Connect is back. It's our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. And join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free. So what are you waiting for? Come on, head over to ttrradio.org/connect 2026. Please don't forget to like. Don't forget to download and please comment and interact with the shows. With your support, I really feel that we can help to reposition the place of teachers and make sure that teachers have a voice in education. And so in true Department of Education fashion, I would like to apologize for the show. You've been listening to The Late Show with Tim on Teachers Talk Radio. I would like to thank my guest, Adam Seymour.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.
I'm Tim Smale. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch up with you next time.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.